What's going on, Spurs fans? Good morning, and I hope you are doing well. And of course, it is the start of Spurs coverage here on Stateside Footy. And of course, we are in the preseason now. And let me tell you, it has been one hell of a summer transfer window thus far. Dare I actually say that this actually is a historic window for Tottenham Hotspur under the stewardship of Enoch. And of course, we're going to get into it. Before I begin, do me a favor, please, and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bells as well, too. And if you guys are on TikTok Live, the link is in the description for you to head on over to YouTube and show the support for the channel. All right, first and foremost, what's up, Adrian? Good to see you, bud. And of course, last night I was on Spurs Diehards TTID, and of course, Adrian is an absolute rock star. Good to see you, Adrian. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it because so far, and for those who are regulars of the channel, this really has been for a large portion of the summer dedicated to the World Cup and, of course, the aftermath when it comes to the U.S. men's national team. But now this is over. Now that we are in the swing of preseason, it is time to get back to the greatest team in England. And of course, I'm referring to Tottenham Hotspur. Now, the interesting thing about this summer, and I want to start right here by saying we had absolutely no idea how this summer was going to play out. Generally speaking, we usually had to wait until July to the start of the new fiscal calendar for Spurs to be able to do something. And generally, for a large portions of Enoch's tenure under the stewardship of Daniel Levy, it was a lot to do about nothing. And of course, there was also, that beautiful, summer window. I believe it was in 2019 where Spurs absolutely did nothing. And as a result, what we ended up seeing was this ownership absolutely not backing any of their managers, regardless if that was Pochettino or regardless if that was Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, Ange Postecoglou, whatever the case may be. This club has been notorious for doing absolute dog shit business in the window. This summer, that has been the complete opposite, as Spurs have broken their personal transfer record twice in a 24-hour period. With the incomings of Mateus Fernandez and, of course, Sandro Tonali. And that was off the heels of bringing in Andy Robertson and Marco Senesi on freeze. And, of course, the incoming of Jan-Paul van Hecke to that defensive back four. And all of a sudden, Enoch has dropped a marker, which is something I got to be honest with you guys, I didn't actually see this happening. Knowing the track record of Enoch, knowing the track record of Johan Lang, I think a lot of Spurs fans came into this summer a little bit of, with a little bit of skepticism. That's even when Vinny Vincentesham last January basically said, hey, listen, we are turning a new leaf. We are turning a new page, and we are going to make funds available when it comes to the wage bill. And we're going to get this squad competing within the top six of the Premier League, because at the end of the day, we're a big six club. Okay, fine. Talk is cheap. Talk is unbelievably cheap. And we're not gonna believe it until we see it. And Spurs fans have every right to actually feel that way, because we have been sold a bill of goods for such a long time under this ownership that the only thing that is going to make turn non-believers into believers is, action with your wallet. And so far, I would probably assume that Spurs fans have been pleasantly surprised, if not, dare I say, happy coming into this summer. And of course, that doesn't necessarily believe that it's over, right? There's still groundwork to be laid. There's still outgoings that have to happen. But there's a few things that we're going to talk about this today. Of course, Spurs actually acting like a legit contending Big Six Premier League team. We're going to get into that, because what we have seen with the outgoing, specifically with some of these academy products that have finally been, moved off instead of essentially leaving them twisting in the wind, which is usually par for the course for this club. But also, where this team is going to find goals, because that for me was the absolute biggest question mark coming into this offseason was when you look at the fact that we still hadn't replaced Harry Kane. We still haven't replaced the production of Sonny. And this team took a major drop off a cliff when it came to, goals. So from that standpoint, we're going to have that discussion as well, too. Let's see. We have Rabbitman 1908 who says, when are we going to sign a number 9 in a left winger? And by the way, he loves the Deuce shirt hanging in the background. One of my favorite players. Yeah, there's actually 2 of them. But he's also one of my favorite players as well, too. And when Deuce was in his prime, he was my favorite American player. And, when he went to Tottenham Hotspur, it was like a dream come true. The only thing that would ever replicate that is if Christian Pulisic found his way to N17. A kid can hope. All right. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and get into this because I do want to talk a little bit about this club acting like a legit big club that they actually are. When you look at total revenue, comparative to the top 10 in the world. And of course, if you follow the Deloitte Money League, you know that this team absolutely is a global brand. When you look at their total revenue, when you look at now the extension into the United States, and now all of a sudden the United States has more Spurs supporters groups than they do in England. That's a testament to the love and the commitment to this club, but also it opens up another continent for this team to absolutely rake in the cash. And so when you think about this club's revenue comparative to what they were spending, with their wage bill, I think it was a 42% wage to revenue turnover, and that actually not only put them at the bottom of the Premier League, but there was actually some championship clubs that actually had a little bit better of a wage to revenue percentage, right? And so one of the things that this club absolutely had to do was put themselves in a position where they can attract some big names. And when you consider that this team had finished back-to-back 17th place finishes, yes, one of those years we won a European trophy. That's fantastic. But last year, this club bottomed out in more than one way. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that, they entrusted this club into somebody who has proven himself not to be able to handle the pressure of putting together rosters at this high of a level. But they did something that I think a lot of Spurs fans are hot and cold on. And that was the appointment of Roberto De Zerbi. And I think we have to start here because I think it adds a lot of context to what this summer is all about. And the fact that Roberto De Zerbi initially didn't want to come to Spurs. He really didn't. But that being said, when you make that type of commitment, and it was a $60 million commitment over 5 years, and one of the things that Spurs brass had to do was understand that there is going to be a modicum of power that they're going to have to give up to a guy like Roberto De Zerbi. They were all in on a guy like Roberto De Zerbi, and in order to get him, there was a level of power that they absolutely had to concede, and that means that maybe this is actually going back to the days where your head coach was also your manager and also was in charge a little bit more involved when it comes to the transfer windows than what we have seen in modern football. And for me, I actually am all about that because there's only one person that knows the type of player profile that he needs in order to succeed. And of course, that's Roberto De Zerbi. And I'm all in. I'm 100% all in on Roberto De Zerbi because at the end of the day, he knows exactly what he needs in order for this club to start competing at an incredibly high level. And if that means competing for honors within the Premier League, making cup runs, getting back into Europe, it's going to be Roberto De Zerbi. And what I liked about Roberto De Zerbi was his evaluation started as soon as he stepped through the doors at Hotspur Way. And that was evaluating the talent that was in-house. And I like the fact that once the summer window started, he was actively getting rid of the players that absolutely cannot hack it at this level. Now, a lot of those guys are still with the club. Guillermo Vicario, and I hate to say it, but maybe even a Cootie Romero. We're probably going to see an exodus somewhere in the midfield, whether that's Lucas Bergvall or whether that's Rodrigo Betancourt, might even be a Papsar. Who knows exactly what the next outgoing is. But the first thing he did was assess the young talent. And a lot of this is, all right, cool, we have a war chest, but that also doesn't mean that we still can't make profit in the process. And that was, all right, fine. As much as I was a big fan of Luka Vuskovic, the reality is that within the next 3 years, Tottenham are going to be competing at an incredibly high level, and the reality is that Luka Vuskovic didn't necessarily fit into the plans, and especially once they brought in Jan-Paul van Hecke, that pretty much signaled that he was pretty much going to be on his way out. And when you consider the logjam at the center back position, it made sense for me, especially with the price that they ended up getting for him. Then it was a guy like Will Lancashire. And I know a lot of Spurs fans have this thing when it comes to academy products, but understand that at a high level in the Premier League, when you look at Liverpool and you look at United and you look at Chelsea and you look at some of these other teams, mainly their academy is used for profit. And don't get me wrong, there are outliers. There are outliers that break through the academy and impress a manager so much where, they're going to be used. And I think that is probably Williams Barnett, who is probably going to end up being that guy who potentially could be a mainstay. And of course, Archie Gray is still going to be a part of this fold. But the reality is this club has such a long history of, leaving young players twisting in the wind. Or they're in a perpetual cycle of loan moves that absolutely make no sense for their career, only to see them come back in the summer and then go back out on loan when really what these players need is legit first-time football. And so we saw, I think, Alfie Dorrington's going to be is going to be on his way. I would probably assume that Ashley Phillips is going to be on his way out as well too. But this is an absolute good thing. And when you look at some of the numbers that are going, Will Lancashire, for as much promise as he shows to be able to essentially get $20 million for an unproven young commodity from Middlesbrough, that was absolute good business. And this is the thing. Spurs have to continue doing this. There is a process where you evaluate young talent and you decide exactly who is going to be a part of the fold and who's not. And if they're not, out the door, because we absolutely could use that cash on top of some of the regular outgoings that we can expect. Cootie Romero, Guillermo Vicario, that very much, both of those guys could end up going for an extra £100 million. And then, of course, Lucas Bergvall as well, too. And I get the impression that Bergvall is going to be a victim of the numbers game, really in that midfield rotation. And if you're a 20-year-old kid, as much as I love Lucas Bergvall, I really do. But let's be honest when we talk about Lucas, it's the fact that, he is still a very raw product. You can see that there is quality, but that quality still needs to be developed. And if this is a situation where we end up getting the exact same deal for a guy like Lucas Bergvall, where it's like we have a buyback clause or a sell-on clause to equal value, that's still going to be good business. And remember, I think we got him for £8.5 million from the Swedish second division. And if somebody comes in with a 40 or 45 million pound offer, I actually heard his numbers as high as 60 million pounds. And if you can get that type of business for a guy like Lucas Bergvall, you say, thank you for your tenure. We're going to move you on and good luck to your career. But we're going to take these 60 million pounds. This is what good teams do. And especially with teams that can afford to be able to do it and turn around and be able to identify players that are going to help them score goals and kick up the table. That is something that Spurs have to be like. This cannot be a one summer thing. This absolutely has to be a continuous process where, all right, fine. Maybe you bring in somebody, maybe you actually bring in a young player, and that is an evaluation that you have a year long. And if it works, great, he's going to be a part of the fold. And if not, you move him on again. And that is something that I've been begging this club to do forever. Because how long have we kept Ashley Phillips or Alfie Dorrington in the tuck on endless cycles of loan moves that end up working out, but then we'll bring him back and put him back on a loan again. And it's like, listen, man, you've already put him in the shop window. Now go get somebody from him or something for him, because it's obviously you're not going to use him in the first team. And this has been, Aleo Veliz, what's his ass now, the winger that went to Fiorentina last season. Like, how many years are we just going to spin our wheels when it comes to players that have no future at this club and get absolutely nothing for them? So now the time the time for that is absolutely right now. And I'm glad that we're doing that, and we're actually getting a profit for some of these players because our transfer business currently is not over. Let's see, Juinza with he's got pronouns, he, him. Okay, I'm glad you cleared that up. Do you support Spurs? Because I do. Yeah, I do. We're in the middle of the Spurs conversation, so I think that should tell you everything. Manor Solomon, thank you. Let's see, Rabbitman 1908 says, I'm surprised we didn't go for Johan Duran. Scored for Benfica on his debut in a friendly. That's the thing. It's like, when we're talking about goals, there are interesting names out there that definitely could provide those goals. Johan Duran is still very young. Now, here's the thing. Like, I don't fault him for taking the bag in Saudi Arabia. I really don't. If you can find yourself generational money, you take it. And I will never fault a player for doing it. But now all of a sudden we're in a situation where everybody, like, every option should be on the table. I really do believe that. We have two strikers that, let's be perfectly honest, I think a lot of Spurs fans are kind of hot and cold on. That comes with the revelation that Richarlison will not accept a loan move, or accept a move away from Spurs. And of course, he has every right to do that. But, Roberto De Zerbi also has the right to, essentially freeze him out if that is going to happen. I don't necessarily see that happening, because at the end of the day, we still need goals. And when you're looking at his season last year, 11 goals, 7 assists, that's something. Is it great? I don't know. But when you're looking at it in the context of a guy like Eli Junior Krupi from Bournemouth, who last year had 13 goals, that is something that you're going to have to really evaluate, because I think the running price now for Eli Junior Krupi is about £85 million, and it's like, okay, well, if we're going to spend the money on the midfield, we might as well spend money getting goals. But that being said, it's like, you actually have to ask that question, where it's like, when you look at Eli Junior Krupi's CV, and you see that, yeah, he had a 20-goal season just a couple years ago, but that was in the French second division. And then he goes to Bournemouth, has a pretty solid year. But that being said, it's like, are you willing to bank £85 million on a dude that had, one season? Now you're going to say Dominic Solanke. At least Dominic Solanke developed at the Premier League level. And then he went and gambled on himself at Bournemouth and was able to put together a season. For me, that is a little bit more comfortable than a dude that is essentially coming from the French second division. It's no disrespect to Eli Junior Krupi. I think he potentially could definitely have a career. I'm not saying that, but it's like, as an evaluator, that you're in those war rooms at Hotspur Way, you have to ask yourself that question: is it worth spending the £85 million versus that goal production that he had last year versus what we already have in house? And I get the impression that Roberto De Zerbi actually rates Dominic Solanke and Richarlison now, or unless he's just saying it, because he's not going to throw people into the bus. Let's see. Actually, let's go here. In all honesty, how long do you see Roberto De Zerbi staying at Spurs? As long as he's being backed in every window, I would probably assume that there's a potential he could be here for 4 years. But if this is a situation where it's only a one summer type of thing, in order to get the fans back on board, and then all of a sudden in the January window we have another window like we saw the last couple January windows, and then next summer we kind of revert back to the mid-scale player, I would probably assume that Roberto De Zerbi's not going to be around for long. He's going to find a way to get himself fired. But as long as he actually has a seat at the table when it comes to the power structure, then I think I think it's all just a moot point. Let's see. I wish I would trade Bergvall to Newcastle and 20 for Nick Voltemata. I don't know how I feel about Nick Voltemata. The interesting thing about it is, again, is Voltemata better than what we have currently in the tuck? I don't know. And I don't, by the way, and I don't necessarily put his performance at the World Cup. I don't necessarily put that over his production at the club level. He didn't have a good summer with Germany. But that being said, you can also chalk that up to the fact that, he played a lot of games and maybe he just ran out of gas. Fair enough. But, the reality for me is, like, I think there are options out there that could make this team a lot better. But, the interesting thing about this is if you're spending £100 million on a dude like Sandro Tonali and you're making that statement of intent, you probably would like to think that the same will apply when it comes to getting goals. Let's see. I think it's been a great window so far with incoming, outgoing players. Yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done because Vicario has to go. Romero has to go. As much as I don't want to see Romero go, there's, again, it's a numbers issue. The idea of potentially moving off of Jed Spence, although Jed Spence said that he wants to stay, but that being said, it's like he's not going to be a starter. And will he be happy being a rotational player off the right-hand side? Because the left-hand side, as far as I'm concerned, is also filled with both Destiny Udoji and Robbo. So it is what it is. Let's see. At least Rishi has the passion to fight for his place. See, I like that as well too. And say what you will about Richarlison. But number one, he absolutely loves the club. That first and foremost is kind of a rarity in today's age, where respect is measured in dollars or in pounds, and respect equals the size of the contract. And if Spurs give that type of contract up, then yeah, there is some loyalty to an extent. But that being said, the modern player really is just all about himself. And again, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's just the modern player. But when you have a guy who is not only willing to fight for his spot, but also, I guess you can say, embodies what this club is all about, embraces the history, embraces the tradition, embraces the fans, even when fans literally are taking a piss out of them, left, right, and center. It's actually nice to see that. And that's the thing with Richarlison. It's like he is going to fight for his spot. Whatever that spot is, he's going to fight. He's not going to be a clubhouse problem. He is going to be a good teammate, and he's going to do exactly what the coach asks of him. And I don't think you can ask for a better mindset from a player. So from that standpoint, that's one of the redeeming qualities that I like about him, and one of the reasons why if he stays, I'm not going to be upset. Let's see. Adrian says our next two signings will be Savinho and Krupi. I don't know about that. To me, Savinho seems like he's going to be a club signing. Like, we've heard the name Savinho now for like a year and a half, and I don't necessarily understand why. Now, yesterday, Adrian, on Spurs Diehards TTID, and by the way, go check that out. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for him as well too. Adrian's a great guy. You brought up the fact that he's good on the ball. He can dribble. He can take on defenders. That's great. That is absolutely great. But when it comes to service in the box, which is one of the main primary factors of what De Zerbi is looking for in a winger, being able to drift in or play a ball, drift in on their best foot, being able to have service in the box, whether that's from the outside playing balls in or being able to slide through balls in. Savinho's not good at that. He's also really not good when it comes to shots on target. And he also gets dispossessed quite a bit as well, too. There was a reason why Pep Guardiola at Manchester City, even when there were injuries off the left-hand side, there was a reason why Savinho was never actually given spot starts. He still remained the backup to the backup to the backup. And it was because Pep Guardiola identified early where his weaknesses are and where he fits into the strengths of what Man City's attack was, and decided that, guess what, man? He's not good enough. He is absolutely not good enough, and we're not going to expose ourselves, which is why they still went out and brought in Antoine Semenyo. And they also used Jeremy Doku, right? So it's like when there was injuries, there would be rotation, and Savinho just never really got his opportunity. And some people think, well, it's because Pep Guardiola at the high level. It's like, no, like they took a flyer on Savinho when he had that great year in Spain. They took a flyer on him. They brought him in. They evaluated and came to the realization that he is just not good enough. And trust me, City wants to sell him. He wants to come to Spurs. But if we buy Savinho, we will be looking for another left winger in another year. And the same thing is going to happen. And that's something that I want to avoid. I am just not a big believer in Savinho's ability to perform at this level. And so for me, I would like to see it go in a different direction. The guy that I really want is Said El-Mala from FC Köln in Germany. Now, I get it. He's young. But when you look at his CV and you look at the fact that every single year he has gotten better, right? And the thing about this is I liken this idea to like when we got Sonny, and he was a little bit of an unproven commodity because at the time he was young. But there are certain characteristics and certain traits of a football player that actually do translate to a higher level. And Said El-Mala is one of those type of guys. It would be like getting Sonny all over again. Playing off the left-hand side, the dude does everything that Savinho does, and then he does more because he scores goals. And the dude is just unbelievable. And he's actually very good on both feet as well, too. And so from that standpoint, that would be the guy that I would be calling up FC Köln. It's like, do you want 60 million euros? Do you want 70 million euros? Okay, cool. Because that is going to be the guy where you can plug in on the left-hand side, and he will be there in 5 years while also getting competition with a guy like Wilson Odobert. Like bringing in El-Mala to compete with Odobert and having those guys every single year bring out the best of each other is only going to make this better for Spurs. So for me, that would be the guy that I would go out and get off the left-hand side. The last thing I want to see is Spurs continue to make the same mistakes because, Johan Lang is absolutely on his knees slobbing that dude's knob. Sorry, man. That's not, he really does love himself some Savinho. I wouldn't be surprised, if he's already been, I wouldn't be surprised if he's been on his knees already. Rabbit Man says, wish we played 4-4-2. I guess. The only way that you play 4-4-2 is if you really don't have wingers. And we should have probably played a little bit of it towards the end of last season, but it is what it is. That's not going to happen. Let's see. I would be okay if we signed Liam Delap. And I actually kind of like Liam Delap. I don't necessarily think we're going to get him. But, I wouldn't mind seeing Liam Delap. I still think there's a lot of good football left on him, but he's the profile you kind of want, right? He's big, he's durable, he's strong, he's got that physicality where he can match up in the hold-up play. You don't have to worry about him getting, essentially pushed down to the turf, which is what you have with Richarlison. I guess the question, is how much would you be willing to spend for a guy like Liam Delap? Because you absolutely know that Chelsea aren't going to give him away for nothing. Let's see. Ozzy Ange, what's going on, my friend? Congratulations, by the way, to Ange Postecoglou getting that job in Saudi Arabia. chances are pretty good that team are going to not only win the Saudi Pro League, but also do well in the Asian Champions League as well too. Hello, sir. Premier League title is coming next season. You watch. I like it. I like it. I really do. It depends on what our business is the rest of the summer, but also it also depends on our health. We absolutely cannot have another season as we saw the last two. If we lose any type of a group of starters for anything longer than a month, then it's going to be hell on wheels. Because again, I look at this team and I still don't necessarily see the depth. So, this is going to be something where the only good thing is we don't have European play. So all you have to do is navigate the cup competitions. And so from that standpoint, I would probably assume that De Zerbi has a plan in place. Rabbit Man says Sarr has to go. I think I'm kind of with you on this one. The only reason why I don't think it's going to happen in the summer is because we still don't have Xavi Simons back. That's probably going to be something around like December, January until he comes back. And when you look at the midfield as far as the second team midfield, to start the season, I would probably assume that Conor Gallagher is going to be the backup for James Maddison at the 10. That I can actually see quite a bit. Which leaves Rodrigo Betancourt, Archie Gray, and Pap Sarr to essentially rotate for the final two midfield spots. And so I would probably assume that Pap Sarr will start the season with a role. But once we start getting some of those midfield pieces back, and depending on how Rupert De Zerbi looks at a guy like Dejan Kulusevski, is he going to be somebody that is going to be put out onto the right-hand side, played well there, or is that going to be something where, like Ange, he kind of saw him as a little bit of a high attacking midfielder? We have no idea, right? So from that standpoint, I think Pap Sarr is probably going to start the season in a Spurs shirt, but would it surprise me if he gets a wintertime move? That wouldn't surprise me. As we're getting players back, it wouldn't surprise me. Let's see. Delap broke Jed's jaw. No thanks to Liam. Oh man, you got to get over that. I'm sure that Jed Spence wasn't necessarily mad at Delap as he was for the ref that absolutely didn't give him a red card in the process. You happy with Matters being our new captain? I wanted Porro as captain. I actually wanted Mickey Van de Ven again as captain. Personally, but no, I don't have a problem with it. He is a guy who I like Richarlison embodies this club, has become a fan favorite. But for me, I was also the one that said if somebody comes in for Matters with a $45 million or a 45 to 50 million pound bid, I would have gotten rid of them. Me personally, I don't like the idea of somebody in their 30s coming back off an ACL surgery. It's a little bit different if he was 25, but I digress. Greg 1987, top of the morning to you, Greg. Good to see you. All right, so I have already said that I would like to see Spurs be aggressive and get Saeed Al-Mala. As far as the striker position is concerned, I would absolutely love to see them make a bid on Flo Balogun as well too. That dude has all the characteristics that you want in a striker. And the interesting thing about Flo is he's a little sneaky as well too, because he doesn't look like he's got the physicality in order to stand up, I guess you can say, in the hold up play. But that being said, it's like, man, he absolutely does. He had an unbelievable World Cup for the U.S., kind of put himself on the map a little bit. But the thing I like about him is that he bet on himself. I always will side with the guy who takes that negative criticism, and he had a lot of it, and he goes to France and he bets on himself. He gambles on himself that he's going to be able to put himself back in the shop window, and he certainly has. He had a 20 goal season across all competitions this year. And when you look at his age, he's 25, so he's coming into his prime, which means that over the next 4 years, you're going to get the very best of a guy like Flo Balogun. Now, here's the thing about Flo. Not only do I think he would be awesome with Spurs, but that also at least solves at least the short-term problems when it comes to striker. It's also kind of interesting as well too when you talk about long-term ramifications at the striker position, because I can actually see a scenario where your 3 strikers this year are Balogun, Richarlison, and Solanke. Next year, Richarlison's contract is out, and so now you have a guy like Flo Balogun and Dominic Solanke competing at that top. And that's the thing where I personally believe that players get better, is where they actually have that internal competition when it comes to training. And again, I know this sounds kind of cliche, but the reality is that iron sharpens iron. And if you don't necessarily have that competition, you get complacent, right? When I think about complacency, I think about Brendan Johnson. That is the perfect example of complacency, to the fact that he didn't necessarily have competition day in and day out, and there was no purpose for him to better some of his weaknesses, because he knew on a week-to-week basis that he was going to be in the starting 11. And say what you will about Brendan Johnson, but I think the proof is in the concept since he's moved. Like, he got moved to the perfect scenario. A team like Crystal Palace, who doesn't necessarily have the type of pressure that Spurs are under, mid-table club that, they've won a couple trophies, and that's great for Crystal Palace. But every single year they're going to be in that 8 to 12 range. There's never going to be that type of external pressure. And it's, you're in a club that does a very good job of developing players and moving them on. And so if you're Brendan Johnson, like, you go from Spurs to Crystal Palace, there's no excuses. And I think we've seen that proof in concept, because, since he's been at Crystal Palace, he's really hasn't really done anything. So from that standpoint, that is the downside of not actually having that type of internal competition that makes players better, that forces players to be better. Because if you think that you think that you've got the entire thing solved, there's always going to be somebody that's going to take your spot. And so that, for me, is as far as incomings go, that is something that I personally believe that this club needs. Guys who are going to push for starting minutes, guys that are capable of taking those positions. And it means that your starters have no choice but to up their games when it comes to training, or they're going to lose their spot, right? That's why I actually like the idea of Dejan Kulusevski going off to the right-hand side, because I actually think not only does he have it, but once he gets his form, I think he's actually going to take that starting job away from Mohamed Kudus. Maybe that's just me, but I see Mohamed Kudus as as the sum of the parts, and I don't necessarily think that long term he's going to be. I don't think he's going to long term be a starter. And I definitely believe that once Kulusevski gets his form somewhere in November, he takes that spot away, because the thing about Dejan Kulusevski is not only does he score goals, but his touch and his ability to play balls into the box is something that Mohamed Kudus just does not provide. It just is what it is. That's the way I feel. Let's see. P.S. How the fuck does Lang still have a job? That's a really good question. I would probably think that he's been put on the sidelines for the summer. Worried, hasn't kicked the ball competitively in 14 months. Yeah, but he's been training on the grass. From the report that I got was that he is going to be cleared for first team training at the end of July. And I would probably assume that, we will see Dejan Kulusevski get preseason matches when they come back from Australia, New Zealand. Those last couple matches against Hoffenheim, that's probably where you'll see it. Let's see. You've already spent $300 million and are going to drop 110 on Balogun and El Said FFP? Well, number one, we're even with the incomings that we have, we've essentially gone from 42% when it comes to wage revenue turnover, and we're probably like anywhere between like 46 and 50. Now, where you want to be is in that 55 to 60%. So that, and the fact that we're nowhere near PSR. We're nowhere near the PSR breach. And when you look at the players that we're selling, right, you also have to look at the outgoings as well too. And when you look at the good business that we've been able to do, and you look at what's on deck, potentially a move for anywhere between 50 to 60 million pounds for a guy like Bergvall, the Cootie Romero sale. And when you look at Vicario going out as well too, now all of a sudden that's going to be an extra 150 million pounds, 160 million pounds that are in pure profit when it comes to sales. So it balances itself out, right? Like it's not like we're spending and not moving players on. The key part of this is the outgoings, not necessarily the incomings. So there you go. Let's see. Krupi and Delap, and we are done for this window. Well, those are two strikers. We still need a winger. Let's see. Greg says Flo's transfer value has peaked, but I think he wants to go to PSG. It wouldn't surprise me if he does. If he goes to PSG, I think that would probably be a sideways move for Flo, because I don't necessarily think he steps into the starting 11 at PSG. I think it's going to be a situation where he's going to have to earn his starting minutes. Now, he's very much capable of doing that, but if he wants to come into a fold where he's probably going to be starting the season off as a starting striker, it's most likely going to be either staying in Monaco or moving to the Premier League, because there's going to be a couple teams where he'd step straight into the starting 11. It all depends on if those moves are good for him. Let's see. Rabbit Man says off to bed it's midnight in Oz. I'm in my 40s, way past my bedtime. All right, man. Yeah, I don't want to keep you off there. By the way, you must be like in, I don't know, like Asia somewhere. Let's see. If he goes to PSG, he won't play 100%. I don't think that would be a good move for him. We have Harry Newman saying Diamande hijack. See, that is also something that I would also love to see as well too. And I know that I think Diamande said last year he wants to go to Liverpool, but the reality is that getting a guy like Diamande would also be game changing as well too, because not only can he play off the left, he also can play up top as well too. And if he comes to Spurs, he challenges 100% for starting minutes. And me personally, he would probably play up top. But that being said, it's like what this team has to do is get that left-sided winger figured out quickly. Let's see. I hope Alex Scott news is fake. I don't rate him. Started most Bournemouth games as a substitute. Alex Scott is a guy that is Spurs through and through. He wants to come to Spurs, but that being said, it's like now that you're starting midfield three, essentially are established, you're coming in as a squad player. So that means if you move a Bergvall or even somebody like Pap Sarr, then yeah, I would think that an Alex Scott would kind of fit into that rotation. But that being said, it's like, okay, is Alex Scott the type of guy that can come in and challenge a starting spot? I don't know, but is he one of those type of guys where he's going to be a good squad player where he is going to embrace the role that is given him? Yeah, maybe. Let's see. Have you considered Spence 2.0 as the new left-right winger? Absolutely not. Because he doesn't have end product. He's not that great of a passer. And that's also something that needs to improve as well, too. And especially when you look at what Roberto De Zerbi would actually like from his wingers versus his outside backs. You also need him to be able to drift in and also be a goal threat. That is not Jed Spence. And Jed Spence right now just doesn't have a role on this team. Like, he wants to come back. That's fantastic. And I like that. But the reality is that he's not taking over Pedro Porro on the right, and he's not taking over Destiny Udogie off the left. And so where does he naturally fit on this team? Now, what you can do is you can let him train potentially as a winger, but you're not going to give him valuable minutes. Like, that would be something where, you have him train for a month at that position and let him get a little bit comfortable. And then maybe, like, in the early, Carabao Cup fixtures, maybe you bring him off the bench late or something like that. But yeah, Dubravka was definitely good business. But, the idea that you're going to change his position and it's going to lead some type of revelation, no. Yeah, like, here's the thing. Spence is a quality utility player, and that's his role. Like, I think that people need to get off this because he was great in the World Cup, and I thought he was decent in the World Cup. He had moments, but you can't base a World Cup on a player and try to extrapolate that to see how it would go over a 38 match schedule. We have seen plenty of players have great World Cups and then fizzle out the very next year. For me, it is, number one, what can he do that is going to be a net benefit to this club? Now, the thing about this is Udogie is better going forward. I think Udogie is I think he provides better service, although I will admit that is an area that he has to get better at. But even as right now, I still think he's better. And I also think when it comes to positioning as a left back, when they track back, I think he's actually better as well too. Where the only thing that Spence does is, essentially closing down space and like, depending on who that winger is, he has a tendency to be very good when it comes to 1v1 defense. But as we've seen over the last 2 years, he picks and chooses when he wants to show up. And if you're going up against a home dude from Liverpool, Mohamed Salah, and all of a sudden he has an absolutely fantastic performance against Salah, although context has to be provided here because Salah, we saw last year that his production fell off a cliff. But that being said, we've also seen him have those type of performances only for the next week to not track back, and have some of these lazy tendencies. And so from that standpoint, it's like I would rather take the guy who's going to hustle and who is going to at least put in consistent efforts. Now, that's the thing about it, though, is that is the problem with Destiny Udogie, is that he can't seem to stay healthy, and that's why they brought Andy Robertson in. That's why they brought in Robbo. So Roberto De Zerbi can actually rotate. So it's like, so when he feels that Destiny Udogie is kind of creeping to that red line, he can make that switch to Andy Robertson. And that way Udogie doesn't have to be in a situation where, he is in a position where he may or may not get hurt. So from that standpoint, yeah. He just doesn't have a position on the left. And also when you're looking at, tactic wise, if Roberto De Zerbi used inverted backs like Ange did, yeah, like maybe I would actually feel a little bit different. But since we don't, and what's required from our outside backs is to provide the width and hug the touchline, playing balls forward, hit from his right foot to the outside shoulder of a winger going forward. That's definitely not his strength. And it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. To me, it just never looked good on the left. That's just, I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel. I just feel like Jed Spence, if he wants to accept a role as being Pedro Porro's backup on the right, I don't have a problem if he stays. But I get the impression that he doesn't want to leave England. So if there is a team that comes in in the Premier League that's willing to pay £40 million, there you go. There you go. Let's see. MRT, Mr. T. I like it. Spence played some great football under Ange. At times he did. I'm waiting to see if Roberto De Zerbi can reinvent Spence in a new position like when good man. Well, so here's the thing. It's like, why would you do that? His strength is being a defender. But that being said, it's also when we get a new left wing in, okay, the backup is going to be Matisse Tell until Wilson Odobert gets back. Then Wilson Odobert is going to be that new winger's backup, and they're going to shift Matisse Tell back to his natural position, which is striker. And it's like, where does Jed Spence kind of fit into that? The answer is he doesn't. Let's see. You know my position on Spence in rotation with Porro. He stays. He ruins. Yeah, that's it. I 100% agree with this, Sean. And he says he's from Scotland. Where are you at in Scotland? Let me know. Let's see. Let's see. Wes says he rates Spence. Okay. It would be a mistake, and I don't think it's going to be a mistake. In the short term, we have guys that can cover the backup right back position. You know, if you need him for a game, you have Archie Gray, who's serviceable. And if you don't want to go with Gray, then you have Kevin Danso that can do the job as well, too. You know, it's like you're talking about maybe 5 games throughout the course of the season that you're going to potentially rotate Pedro Porro and give him a breather. But that being said, for the first half of the season, it might be 2 games. And that's going to get you to the January window where you can easily go and get a backup right back. Like it's not that big of a problem. Let's see. Man City holding Savinho hostage reminds me of the Nottingham Forest saga last season. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's Man City trying to extract as much money as they possibly can. This has nothing to do with them trying to get cover for the loss of Savinho. Trust me, they have enough cover on the left side. When it comes to that, this is Man City saying, well, here's the thing, man. You spent 85 million pounds on Fernandes. You spent 100 million pounds on Sandro Tonali. You spent 55 or 54 million pounds on Jan-Paul Van Hecke. So even though that we have something in place, and a deal, a formation of a deal is all been agreed upon. Now what we're going to do is say, okay, cool, you can have them for an extra 10 million pounds. And Spurs should be that team that says, you know what, man, we have everything agreed, and now you're asking for more money. We're walking away. That's it. We're walking away. We're going to go after somebody that's a little bit better, or somebody that fits maybe a little bit better in what we need. And Spurs should be that team to say, you know what, fuck all this noise, man. You guys are welshing on a deal that we already have in place. Yeah, we're not doing that. Vinny Jr. to Arsenal is in the pipeline. I hope not. Spurs need to finish in the top 6. I would agree. Let's see. Afternoon, actually. Okay. It is. It definitely is. You're doing a good now. I appreciate it. Thank you. Where about in Scotland are you from? Kind of want to know that, Sean. I was on Adrian's show yesterday. Yeah. So I'm going to finish with this because I know I'm probably going to get shit with this. But 2 days ago, 3 Premier League teams placed a call to AC Milan, Manchester United, Liverpool, and Tottenham Hotspur. And it was essentially an exploratory phone call to find out how much they would ask for Christian Pulisic. Now, this doesn't mean that Christian Pulisic is going to either of those teams. It just means that Spurs were doing their due diligence to find out exactly how much it would cost. And AC Milan came back and said that it's going to be 70 million euros, which is about 4.012 pounds. So 64 million pounds. Which is a very good price for a guy that scored 31 goals in 2.5 years in Italy. And I think Wes Polar says, well, which version do you get? That is a very good question. But there's no doubt that he fits Roberto De Zerbi and what he's asking for somebody off the left-hand side. He's very good when it comes to taking on defenders 1v1. He's very good at charging the end line and putting balls in. And, of course, he scores goals. He provides assists, and he's already done it at the Premier League level. with Chelsea. Me personally, I think he would be a star with Spurs. Now, the question is A, is he going to stay healthy? Potentially. But that being said, he's 20, He's 27, so you're getting at least 3 years of what's left of his prime. And depending on the business on the left-hand side, you can also envision a scenario where, he gets 65, 70% of the starts while still rotating in whoever is going to be behind him, which is Matisse Tell to start the season, and then eventually Wilson Odebear. The interesting thing about this is, if you're asking me gun to my head, and yes, he is American. But if you're asking me and you're holding a gun to my head and you said, would you rather take Savinho or would you rather take Christian Pulisic? I'm taking Christian Pulisic 10 times out of 10, because you know what the end result is. That guy is going to find ways to score, and he's going to find ways to get his teammates involved when it comes to the attack. There are issues. I'm not going to lie. There are issues. Like the last year and a half, he's dealt with niggling injuries, and last year, coming back from that injury in the second half, he only had 1 assist the entire way through. It was literally his worst stretch. I'm not going to lie about that. So there is a little bit of a gamble taking him on. But if you're asking me straight up, if I'm taking one or the other, I'm taking Pulisic over Savinho 10 times out of 10. Because A, he's already done it at the Premier League level. B, he's in his prime. And he's the type of guy who solidifies that left-hand side. And you can be smart about it when it comes to rotation. And you're going to be able to keep him healthy. And he's one of those type of guys that will literally drag this team back to the Champions League. That would be for £64 million for a guy that has scored 31 goals in 2.5 seasons with Milan. It's a no-brainer. But again, if you're asking me to take either Christian Pulisic or Saeed El-Mala, I'm taking El-Mala, because the upside is just that much better. The upside, like, on the one hand, you get a dude that's in his prime and he's already proven, which is attractive to me. And for the short term, this year, next year, you're going to get the best versions of himself. But with Saeed El-Mala, you're thinking 5, 6, 7 years down the road, he's going to be that fixture on the left-hand side. He's going to be the new Sonny. And for me, I think that's just a little bit more attractive. I would be willing to pay the exact same amount to get El-Mala out of Frankfurt, or FC Cologne, than to pay the £64 million to get Christian Pulisic out of AC Milan. But that being said, either or both would be absolutely fantastic for this team. Absolutely fantastic. Where do I think Jedi is going? That's a very good question. I actually think Jedi, and also potentially a guy like Tyler Adams, could very well end up at Manchester United. And I actually think that would be a good spot for Jedi. You move to a bigger club, you're already proven, and it looks like he's gotten over his knee injury. So from that standpoint, I think Manchester United would be a good fit. Although I've been wanting him at Spurs as well too. I think naturally he would be an upgrade over Destiny Udogie on the left. But I still believe in Udogie's upside. Let's see. I feel sorry for Savinho. He wants to come to us. Yeah. And what's funny is the only guy that wants him is Johan Lang. I get the impression that Roberto De Zerbi doesn't want him. He feels like he's a club signing. Stevie Bamba. Nice. He says he's from Paisley, Scotland. Okay. I don't know where Paisley is, but let's see. Odebear and Tell are not ready for the Prem. So here's the thing. Roberto De Zerbi loves these two players, and he understands the upside. The thing with Odebear is, like, he's probably not going to be ready to start the season. I would probably assume that he's going to be back somewhere in that October-November time frame. And then it's going to take him a couple months to regain his form. But that being said, it's like you're bringing Odebear back as essentially as a rotational left wing. And from that standpoint, he's going to be able to regain his form without having that necessary pressure. I kind of like that idea. And me personally, I think Tell going back to his natural striker position and letting him absolutely train and drill and just get better as a striker is going to be a net positive for Spurs. It's going to be interesting to see exactly how this one plays out, because I actually am a big believer in Matisse Tell. And also, he also can actually have the time to put some meat on his frame. That's the one thing that Matisse Tell has to do. He has to get bigger, but he also has to work on his touch around net. But I don't know. I kind of like I'm a big believer of Matisse Tell. So let's see. We got why are we keeping Richie? 2 reasons: because Richie will not accept a move away. I've said the move all along is to go to Saudi Arabia and reunite with Ange Postecoglou. But I think for moral reasons, Richie does not want to go to Saudi Arabia. Fair enough. But that being said, it's like you're looking at interest around the Premier League. And I get the impression there really just isn't much interest, or if there is, you're talking like a 10 to 15 million pound move. And I don't necessarily think that it would be worth it to let him go for that much. But that being said, it's the last year of his contract, right? So you're going to take what you can get. But again, Richarlison has to want to accept a move, and he's just not going to. I think what's going to end up happening is that, yeah, he'll play out the season. He'll leave on a free. And would it surprise you, by the way, in his walk year, that Richarlison bounces back to have a 15-goal season? I don't think that would surprise me in a walk year where he's going to be a free. And, and he parlays that maybe, like, for instance, like a move to Fulham, or, maybe he goes back to Everton to finish out his career. Who knows? But, like, would it surprise me if all of a sudden a guy like Richarlison in a contract year has one of his best seasons of his career? It wouldn't surprise me at all. That would be, Richarlison. Carl Slim Blue, aka Audio Artisan. What's going on, my guy? Big up to you. Tell is a decent player. I think he's a little bit more of a decent player, but he's got to get moved back to his natural position, and he's got to do 2 things. Number one, get bigger, and put a little bit more meat on his frame so he can withstand the pressure and the physicality of the Premier League. And he also has to develop a little bit more of a touch around net. Let's see. Lange out 100%. I've been on that for 2 years now, Wes. So looks like we're preaching to the choir there. Let's see. Searles 14 says, I think Sebastian Berhalter to Middlesbrough is a good move for him. Yeah, I do too. And again, this is somebody that, he bet on himself. And if you remember, he was damn near out of Major League Soccer, toiling at the end of the bench with Columbus and Austin. He gets the move to Vancouver, and he develops himself into a player who made the World Cup roster. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that is it's weird. Like, I know this is going to sound cliche, but that's really kind of the American way. Somebody that has the utmost belief in their abilities to get better. He gets better. He was given the opportunity, and he parlayed that into a World Cup roster spot. And now he's parlayed that a move to a team where, what I like about it is the fact that it's good business for Middlesbrough, man. They say they sold Hayden Hackney for 16.5 million pounds to Everton. And they turn around and they get Sebastian Berhalter, who is 25 and he's in his prime, to replace Hayden Hackney, essentially for peanuts on the dollar. And they team up, they team him up with Aiden Morris. And now all of a sudden you have an American double pivot on a team that's probably one of 3 teams that are going to be favored to win the championship. And, if Middlesbrough get their move up this year, and there's no reason to think that they wouldn't, now all of a sudden you have 2 more American players playing in the Premier League. Now, whether or not they can consolidate the Premier League, we have no idea. But this not only was this good business for Middlesbrough, it's good business for Sebastian Berhalter as well too. I've been a big believer in Sebastian Berhalter over the last year and a half. I saw him develop into a cornerstone player in Major League Soccer. Now, what does that mean on the global market? Well, it means that you're going to put yourself in the shop window for Europe. And I think this move, like, it's not such a huge move when it comes to competition level. I still think the championship is night and day better than Major League Soccer, but it is the right level in order to start your European career. And you're going to a very competitive league, and you're going to be able to showcase your skills. And if you absolutely help your team get promoted, now all of a sudden 2 years later you're in the Premier League. So it's a great move for Berhalter. Let's see. Should Freeze go to Celtic? 100%. 100%. And listen, I'm in the minority here. Like, I still think Matt Freeze is the best shot stopper of the group that were on the World Cup roster. Now, that's not saying that I don't believe in Diego Cochin or Gaga Slonina, Julian Eystone, like Chris Brady. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But where Matt Freeze came up short was his footwork. Like, he's like, he is like one of those throwback keepers from the days of yore where, all you're required to do is to stop shots, be strong on your line, and then play the ball long, right? The old school keeper, right? In the same vein of a Casey Keller or a Tony Meola or a Tim Howard or a Brad Friedel, right? Where Chris Brady and Matt Turner probably have the advantages, like, they're very good playing out of the back. Matt Freeze is just not. But he goes to Celtic, becomes a starter, and now you're playing for a team that is at least every single year going to be in the Champions League. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to go deep in the Champions League. That's not what I'm saying at all. But at least you're going to have European competition on top of the Scottish Prem, which is actually getting better. I actually do think the Scottish Prem is getting better. When you see teams like Hearts reinvent themselves, it's, and because teams are cheap there, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more investment coming into Scotland, and then all of a sudden you see Hibs get better, or you see Aberdeen get better, and all of a sudden the duopoly of Celtic and Rangers is not going, like, in 10 years I can see that happening. Let's see. What standout player in major without a standout player? I'm trying to understand this. Without standout players, the MLS would be irrelevant. Yeah. Does Weston stay at Juventus? 100%. No, what's so funny about this, Lewis Firth, is that you have it actually wrong. There's a lot of physicality and speed in Major League Soccer. That's the one thing that they do have. And the reason why I know this is because our shitty refs allow everyone to get away with murder when it comes to physicality. Where Major League Soccer falls short is what I would say is in the technical ability getting forward. That's where Major League Soccer historically has fell short, which is why they expanded the DPs to 3 so they can bring in outside foreign talent in order to improve it. But when it comes to American development, the biggest issue when it comes to technical ability is our coaches are just trash. That's kind of where I'm at. Does Weston stay at Juve? 100%. Yeah, MLS 100% is physical. That's not the issue. The defense is so poor. But that's by design. That's by design. And if you look at the way that rosters are constructed in Major League Soccer, I know we're getting off topic, but because we have these goofy roster rules where we have DPs, we have TAM level players, target allocation players, we have general allocation players. Most teams spend their money on attacking DPs, whether it's strikers, wingers, or 10s. Most teams will use their TAM level exemptions to build out their midfield, and that leaves their defense with general allocation players, which are just journeyman players, or they're going to be youth players. Same thing with their goalkeepers as well too. And so what you have is this stupid imbalance where attacks are far and away better than defenders, which is why you see average score lines of like 4-1. Right? That is for me, that is the biggest problem with Major League Soccer. Is like when people are trying to compare Major League Soccer to the championship, it's like, no. Because there's parachute payments in the championship and half the league has got them. Those teams spend at least 50 million pounds on their wage bill, where an average Major League Soccer team only spends 20. Like, it's night and day. It's not even the same. And championship teams have better quality and they have better defenses. It's like it's such a silly conversation. It's like, what Major League Soccer should do is get rid of these stupid roster rules. And if your salary cap is 20 million, okay, great. Let it allow a team to build a side within the confines of that salary cap. And I guarantee you would see a lot better teams in Major League Soccer. Anyway, let's see. Rangers and Celtic not investing in squads. That's why Hearts are catching up. To an extent, I would agree. No investment by Celtic and Rangers, again, to an extent. But yes, I agree. Borussia Mönchengladbach is selling Reina. Is the moment he goes to... No, I don't think he's going to go to Major League Soccer. Would it surprise you if he ended up in the Netherlands or if he ended up in Italy? That wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't think he's going to Major League Soccer unless that's it. You know what I mean? Like if that's the only offer and there's no other opportunities in Europe, yeah, I probably would assume that he would go to Major League Soccer, but I guarantee there's going to be a market for him. Let's see. If you could take a young player under 23 from Major League Soccer, who would for Spurs? There's a few. Number one, I would probably take Kevin Sullivan, attacking midfielder from Philadelphia. He's 16 years old, and he's already got a deal in place to go to Manchester City when he's 18 years old. Like, this kid is legit. He is legit. The other guy would probably be maybe Julian Hall, striker from the New York Red Bulls. He's 17 years old, and his tough touch around the net is just unbelievable. Xavier Gozo, right wing from Real Salt Lake, again, unbelievable prospect. And this dude just has that top end speed where he can blow past by defenders, and his shot on net is unbelievable. So those would be the three. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, the other night, why is a one late? Yeah, that's because our defenses are terrible. What do you think about Kyogo? Yeah, Kevin Sullivan. Yeah, my man. Yeah, Kevin is legit, man. He's a legit dude. And if you ask me, like, if there was one American prospect that I would take on Spurs right now, it would be Kevin Sullivan. Without a doubt. That would be like number one. And then like number two would be like Julian Hall. And then the third would be Xavier Gozo, in that order. I wouldn't mind seeing all three of them. But listen, it is what it is. Let's see. We've been cooking once we get some attackers. Yeah, and so I'm going to finish this off by saying that Spurs definitely have themselves an opportunity to get better when it comes to the attacking thing. And on the one hand, I do appreciate what they've done this summer. They have greatly improved their midfield, and I also think that they've greatly improved their back four. That's absolutely fantastic. No doubt about it, but that wasn't the crux of their issues last year. The reason why Spurs finished 17th place last year is because they could not score goals at all. And what's funny is so I was looking at, for instance, like last year, I think Saeed El-Mala had like 14 goals, somewhere in that area, and Krupi had 13 goals. And so, you're talking about 26 goals. If you had those goals last year with Spurs, they would have finished on like 76 goals, which would have been fourth best in the Premier League. And no way do they even come close to being in a relegation battle last year. Goals are the lifeblood of any club. And what this team should, like, I get it. We were in the middle of a World Cup, not a lot of player movement. I understand. But the reality is, like, this team needs to prioritize goals, which means this team has to get better on the left, and also has to get better up at striker as well, too. And I understand that Spurs fans have fell in love with junior Eli Krupi. But again, I always ask that question where it's like, listen, you're talking about a dude that had 13 goals last year for Bournemouth. A solid season. If you remember, Dominic Solanke had a 15 goal season in his first year with Spurs, coming over from Bournemouth as well too. So, I guess the question that I have for you is, like, is it worth the £85 million to bring him over? unless you actually look at him as somebody that is going to be able to develop and develop into something where you're going to get consistent 15 goal seasons, then if you believe that, then I guess it's worth the 85 million pounds. But, I look at what we have and I ask myself this question, that if we actually had service, like legit good service, where we're getting progressive through balls through central areas, we're getting very good service into the box from the outside. Is this something where Dominic Solanke can regain his form and get back to that 14 to 16 goal type of season? It's like my instinct is to say yes, because he's in his prime. And yes, he dealt with injuries last year and the year before. I get it. But is that something where you can pick and choose which opponent that you're going to start both Solanke and Richarlison? And is this something where in the aggregate, you can find 25 to 30 goals from your two strikers? That is the question that you have to ask when you're evaluating these two strikers. Like, if they're able to stay relatively healthy, can they combine for 25 to 30 goals? It's a great question. It's a very good question. Or is this something where that investment has to be used on a striker without a doubt? That's going to be the question that I think you guys have to ask yourself, right? Because those are the questions that I ask. Me personally, I think the answer is yes, that you actually have to find the next answer at striker, because what happens if they do nothing? Richarlison comes off the books next year and they make a run at Harry Kane and they don't get Harry Kane. What then? I think a lot of people just assume he wants to come back and close out his career. It's like, what if he prioritizes a different club, or he re-signs with Bayern Munich, or he goes somewhere else? It's like, the one thing you cannot do is hang your head on that. And so you actually have to think long term. And it's like, I think this would be the opportunity to do it. There is junior Eli Junior Krupi at Bournemouth, and that's going to cost a pretty penny. Or you have Flo Balogun in Monaco, that's not going to cost you a pretty penny. They're only asking 55 million euros, and you're getting a guy coming off a 20 goal campaign across all competitions, and one of those competitions was the Champions League, where he was actually pretty goddamn good, and he was pretty good in Ligue 1 as well too. So, and a guy, that's the thing. It's like, there are options out there where we can get better. Absolutely, we can get better. It's going to take a lot of intestinal fortitude from the Spurs side. But if this is something where you told me that we're going to get Savinho and we're going to ride with Richarlison and Solanke, like, we are actually in a world of hurt if that happens, because I'm telling you right now, Savinho is not the answer. And we're going to be talking about this left wing. We're going to be talking next summer. We're going to be talking about needing to upgrade this left wing side, where you could have spent the money and got, Said El-Mala from Germany. And, and then if you told me you went out and got Krupi with El-Mala, I'd be okay with that. 100%. Let's see. I have to think Kane wants the EPL goal record. Yeah, I agree with that as well too. But you can't hang your hat on Harry Kane coming back, right? So you have to do right by your club, and we still have a season to play, right? We have a season to play. Let's see. I can see us not getting a striker or a winger. They have already said more. Luca Williams, Barnett, and Olasesi and Byfield will play a part. I don't know. I think when you look at the window that we had, which in itself is actually kind of historic, I think a lot of fans will say that it was an incomplete window because we didn't address the elephant in the room, which is goals. And I have a feeling that I kind of believe that as well too. Like, we have to bring somebody in off the left side, because the last thing you want to do is start your season with a left wing rotation of Matisse Tell and Mikey Moore. Listen, I like Mikey Moore, I really do, but is he ready to handle the pressure and the responsibility of playing in the Premier League? I don't know. The only way he's going to do it is by playing, by the way. I understand that. But, for a team that's coming off a 17th place finish, that if they don't do it, we're going to be talking about this come January again, that we're going to have to upgrade the left wing positions. I would rather just avoid that at all possibilities. Let's see. Or one goes, and we probably sign Troy Parrott for club train reasons, except I don't think if we were going into a European campaign season, I would probably understand why you're saying that, but I don't think this year we have to worry about homegrown. And we already have 3. So we have Solanke or England, essentially homegrown England. So it's Solanke, Madison, what's his ass? Conor Gallagher. It's we have those numbers. So let's see. Spurs spine is top notch. Attackers need an upgrade. Truly, yeah, I would agree with that. So I guess that leaves my early prediction. Now again, I'm gonna have a prediction show at the end of the window as we're getting into the first match of the season against Brentford. So my early what I would consider success. What I would consider success this season is getting into a European spot. Now that doesn't necessarily mean Champions League. And if we don't address goals, then I'm gonna completely write that off. But a Europa League or a Conference League spot coming off of back-to-back 17 place finishes, I would consider that a good first full season for Roberto De Zerbi, as long as there is at least a cup run between the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. As long as we make a deep run in one of those, I would say that would be a successful first season. It's the same thing that I said last year with Thomas Frank. Somebody asked me that question, and I said, okay, cool. If we can finish in a European spot, because I didn't think we had the wherewithal to even talk about the top 4. But, if we stay healthy and we overperform some last year, if we can finish between 6th and 8th, and we can get to Wembley in at least one cup competition and advance to the knockout rounds in the Champions League, that would be a fantastic first season for Thomas Frank. We did actually get to the knockout rounds, but we bottomed out in both cup competitions and, of course, the Premier League as well, too. And ultimately, it got him fired. And it's going to be the exact same thing this year if we can stay healthy. And staying healthy is number one, my first key. So it's going to be up to Roberto De Zerbi to have the quality in his rotation, that we are going to be able to keep the same tempo, the same pace, the same quality when we're rotating. But also, if we can finish anywhere between 6th and 8th, get ourselves into a European competition, regardless if it's Conference or Europa, and at least get to Wembley in one of the cup competitions, I would think that would be a dynamite first season. It's going to be something tangible that we can build off for the next season. And we're going to know exactly where our weaknesses are. I'm sure we're going to know that by October anyway, but you get exactly what I'm saying. That would be what I would consider a good, solid start, considering that this team has finished in 17th place in back-to-back seasons, and we literally got relegated last year. Nearly got relegated last year. So I think that with the upgrades and defensively, the upgrades in midfield, I think that's going to help. What does that mean when it comes to goals? I think this team is going to, again, without bringing upgrades off the left or upgrades up top, I think this team is going to be one of those teams that are going to, like last year, we're going to score a lot of set piece goals, but we're going to have to be able to find some sort of rhythm in that attacking forward. We're going to have at least one of those guys step up and be that guy. And if this is going to be a situation where, man, listen, we're going with Luca Williams-Barnett, or we're going with Mikey Moore and Matisse Tell off the left-hand side, And again, it's no disrespect to those kids, man. I like them, but we absolutely need somebody off that left-hand side that is going to be able to set the tempo for this attack. And it's also, by the way, it's also because I don't believe in Mohamed Kudus. I really don't. And but by the way, and I wasn't a big fan when we got him either, because when I saw him over at West Ham, I was wondering what the hell we saw in him. But he's probably going to start the season on the right. Kudos to Kudus. But that being said, it's like you need somebody on that left that is going to be able to carry this attack going forward. And listen, it's not going to be Mohamed Kudus. So we'll see, man. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, that's kind of like my early prognostication is going to be who is going to be targeted for that left-hand side, because again, goals matter. And it was the biggest reason why we were in a relegation scrap last year, because we just literally could not score goals whatsoever. And it was just by, I guess you can say, by a great escape because of Roberto De Zerbi that, it was square pegs and square holes that we were able to, stay up on the last day. So, I generally do not want to see that again this season, but let's be perfectly honest. This team still needs to improve. So that's going to do it for me, guys. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I got to jump off. Tonight, 7:30, the MLS live stream is going to be back. Orlando will be taking on the Eastern Conference leader, Nashville. And of course, this is Antoine Griezmann, who recently signed with Orlando City. So we will get our first look at Antoine Griezmann on the MLS live stream. That is tonight at 7:20 Eastern. So I'm looking forward to that one. We're in the post World Cup afterglow, and on Sunday I will be joined by the Dermatron as we continue our, I guess you can say, our Sunday show. It's football, not soccer, and of course on this show we will be talking about promotion and relegation. All throughout the English pyramid. We're going to be talking about whether or not the EFL should give the National League an extra automatic promotion spot. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So plenty going on this weekend on the channel. So I hope you guys come back, especially tonight for the MLS live stream. And of course, tomorrow it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So I will see you then. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell. And of course, if you're watching on TikTok live, head on over. The link is in the description, so you can head on over to YouTube and support the channel. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I will see you tonight. Take care.